which is worse, a trailer that gives away too much of the movie versus one that it makes it too vague?
Oh boy, that's a great question. You know, a trailer that gives away too much has almost certainly tested well. So if a trailer tests well, I've done my job. No one can complain around me. It's not the fault. The consumer has voted, and out it goes into the public. So even though there might be some kvetching in a movie theater about, oh gosh, this is a 3-minute trailer and it's too, this is too much, and they may be complaining, but at the end of the day, you can't put the blame, on the hands of the marketing team or the studio. Now, a trailer that's too vague is equally problematic for sure. If you're not telling the consumer, enough, and maybe you have a film that's, how do I say this, short of great trailer moments, it's very difficult to market. One of my mentors in the business is Joel Wayne, who was at Warner Brothers for 25 years, the godfather of film advertising, without question. I think he worked on 5,000 films, he told me, if you can believe it. He was at Warner Brothers when they would release 30 movies a year, and he did all the campaigns, which, believe me, that, today creative executives are working on 2 movies a year tops, because it's so stressful, and, you can't clutter the desk with too many projects. So, Joel was a big fan of films that were problematic, of doing special shoots, creating his own footage, creating, whether it was a live shoot. There's a very famous, as an example, there's a very famous trailer, teaser for Toys, which was a Barry Levinson movie starring Robin Williams. The movie was problematic. It ultimately did not do well. People didn't go to it in enough numbers. It was not successful. However, there was a teaser that was created, I believe it was by Bob Israel at Aspect Ratio, the comedy place. It was Robin Williams standing in a field doing Robin Williams, just riffing, just anything that come to his mind, playing with the field around him, and it was just like a stand-up for 45 seconds. Toys comes on the screen. That got, now you talk about vague and not giving you a lot of information. He didn't talk about the movie at all, not once, but you knew Robin Williams was in it, and you knew it was a comedy, and maybe that was enough to get around the problems that the movie had in its marketability. So that was a pretty vague spot, and just one last comment on vague. I worked on most of the Harry Potter films, and the job of us in marketing, as the films continue to open and succeed, thank goodness, allowed us a lot more freedom to be more artistic, to be more creative. And we just got in the habit of doing a teaser 6 months, a year before one of the Potter films came out, and it would be vague. It would not tell you a lot of the plot at all. Maybe there was a scene that was just really cool. Maybe it was Voldemort as a young kid, like a flashback. And we just knew that would be gold for the fans who couldn't wait to see what's next. And the trick for those films was being fresh and not being redundant, because there's a lot of redundancy to the world of Harry Potter. The kids were the 3 kids. Granted, they grew up on screen, and that was super cool to see, and a huge marketing benefit, I believe. But you know what Hogwarts looks like after the first film. You know what Dumbledore looks like. And so Hagrid's this giant creature and dude and friend of theirs. And so those were things that once the first film came out, they were no longer a surprise to the fans or non-fans. But as we continued, to go forward in our mantra of being fresh and not duplicating the message, so people wouldn't say, well, I just saw that in the last movie, we really tried to up the ante. And as the books got more sophisticated, the marketing got more sophisticated because our audience was getting older and more sophisticated. So, boy, Harry Potter was the perfect storm from a marketing standpoint. Our audience just kept getting older. They were able to, so you start introducing romance when the kids are teenagers, and it became scarier, and there was all of a sudden people are dying. It becomes a lot more intense, and all of this obviously thanks to J.K. Rowling and her books. But it allowed me the freedom to do stuff I couldn't do on any other movie, because people knew enough about Harry Potter. They were probably coming. Thank goodness the films delivered very successfully. They were executed brilliantly, and David Heyman, the producer, has so much to be credited for on that front. But I love doing those teasers because it was beyond the norm. I didn't have to do a 3-minute, I'm going to tell you everything trailer. I could be much more teasery.
Right. Do you think art house cinema goers are drawn to vague trailers versus family-friendly?
Wow, good question. A24 kind of is an interesting studio. My college students know A24. They know the name of a distribution company.
Right.
No one goes to a movie because it came from Warner Brothers. But A24 is like the good seal of approval for this age group, this young adult age group, and they do a remarkable job, I think, of not only choosing movies. They have exquisite taste and a good gut. There's that word. But they know how to find their audience, and they know what to do in their trailers. And those art house trailers, and I'll call them art house. Not because they don't want to put them on 3,000 screens and make as much money as they can, but the content of these films are meant for a certain niche audience, a young adult audience. And I think that allows them to be a little more, they're riskier. You're right, they don't go down the traditional path as much. They take a lot of time on like one scene, and let it play out, which is the opposite of what most trailers do. What do? You chop up the scenes. You try to show as much as you can of this scene, and that's funny, and that's scary, and you put them all together, and you have a trailer that consequently tells you a lot. A24, I think, does a really good job of balancing story with teasing you, creating anticipation, not answering every question.
Right, because sometimes I don't want to totally know what movie I'm going to see, and I'm not taking young children, so I get it would be different, but I just watched the trailer for, I think it's The Last Showgirl with Pamela Anderson, and it wasn't totally clear, and now I want to see the movie. I'm like, whatever was in that
it worked for you.
2 minutes, I want to see it. I don't want to know too much more, but I want to see the movie now.
Yeah. That's knowing your audience. I think that's really a marketer who knows their audience and finding something that's going to intrigue you without selling you. That's the thing about A24. You never feel pandered to, sold to, because there's a BS meter out there amongst college students that is infallible. They can sniff out when something ain't right behind the facade that you're trying to present. They can suss out, I don't want to say cheating so much, but if a trailer does not have, if it tries to tell you too much, I think a lot of the reaction you get is, well, you told me so much Now I know I don't want to go see it because I don't care about that story or that character or the actor playing that person. You know, sometimes holding those things back is to your benefit, you know, from a marketing standpoint.
Why was A Few Good Men one of the most important trailers you cut?
Well, the timing of it was pretty remarkable for me because, as I mentioned previously, you know, I got hired by Castle Rock, and it actually came at a time where the technology was changing in editing. And we were going from, I learned on a Moviola, which was 35 millimeter film that had 2 tracks to it. It was a stand-up thing, it was about this high. Could take off a finger very easily. It was a very dangerous thing. And then we would the technology transferred to what's called a chem flatbed. A Steenbeck is another brand name for it, where the film would run on a table. And the monitor, kind of like a TV monitor, would be right in the middle. And you had 2 rolls of sound rolling on a chem. Okay, we're making advances here. But you're still working with film. Videotape. Videotape came in the 80s. So you'd have a movie on, say, a 3/4 inch videotape, which was about like a book, and a couple of machines, and you'd constantly change the tapes out, and basically you'd create a sequence onto another piece of videotape, and but you were no longer working with film. Then the advance that we're at today, the Edit-Droid was created by George Lucas. It became the Avid, and it was digital editing. So all of it basically in pristine resolution. You would transfer the film to a hard drive, and that you would work with that, and you could work much faster, cleaner. It was very quiet. You didn't have the rolling of the machines whirring around. You could make a copy of a 500 cut trailer with the press of a button, which you had to go to a lab to duplicate in the past. So digital editing was the new thing. I was one of the first adopters of it, and it just so happened to happen right when I went to Castle Rock, right when our biggest film of all time, A Few Good Men, was going into production. Rob Reiner directing, Jack Nicholson, Tom Cruise, Demi Moore, in a screenplay by Aaron Sorkin, based on his play. So all the elements for a giant successful movie based on a courtroom drama were there, including 2 of the biggest movie stars, 3 of the biggest movie stars in the world, which is never a bad thing in marketing. So I chose that week to teach myself or to learn how to use the Avid. So I went from cutting the trailers on videotape to using Avid. And so the pressure of having a new job, having to learn a new technology. I am not the most technologically brilliant guy in the world, so that was a struggle. And it put a lot more stress and pressure on me for that particular film, the most important film, maybe my first big film at Castle Rock. So the combination of all those things created a lot of worry on my part. I worked a lot of late nights, but there's one, and I tell the story in the book, I happened to go to the set, which I normally don't do. I don't like going to the set. I like getting the film. I like being alone in the dark with the movie. I really don't care how the sausage is made. I just want the sausage. So, but I happened to go to the set when Rob was directing the very famous scene with Jack Nicholson and Tom Cruise where he says, "You can't handle the truth," which has become one of those lines in movie history. So when I saw that scene shot, I could not wait to get the dailies of it the next morning, have them transferred onto hard drive, and I could not wait to start cutting that trailer, using that courtroom scene as the guts of this trailer. And you know, there's a happy ending with A Few Good Men. It was a huge hit. It did open. It did go on to be, I think, the second highest grossing film of the year next to Aladdin. My recollection is we opened in the same weekend as Aladdin with Robin Williams again. And they did great business with families, and we did killer business. We were R-rated, so we were the adult choice, and both movies just cleaned up at the box office, and that makes one very happy. Yeah, when you're at the studio that makes it.